Good morning. My name is Miroslav Gregoric. I am ex-Slovenian Nuclear Safety Administration Director. I was involved in UNMOVIC chasing of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq in 2002-2003. And late, I was 6 years at the IEA Office of Nuclear Security. I would like to speak about nuclear facilities in war context, about legal framework and practice. So first, we should know that nuclear civil use is the result of military development. And as we all know, excuse me, first nuclear weapons were developed by US in 45. Soviet Union followed in 49, UK in 52, France in 60, China 64, India 74, Pakistan 90, 98, and North Korea 2006. South Africa also developed nuclear weapons in late 70s, but dismantled them in 89. And several reports indicate Israel also developed nuclear weapons way back, maybe in late 60s or early 70s. Now, the nuclear weapons development started in USA, and if we look at the plutonium path, the first reactor was Chicago Pile CP1, which achieved criticality in 2nd December 42. By Argonne National Laboratory, and then many different reactors were built in a hurry under the war program, Manhattan Project, and most production reactors were built in Hanford in Idaho. This is a Chicago pile of graphite blocks. This is Hanford, one of the Hanford reactors, production reactors. And in addition to the production of plutonium, of course, the plutonium extraction plants need to be built. And also, this is a picture of 1944 Hanford site with a huge plutonium extraction plants. Now, in parallel, uranium path went on in USA, and this was developed at Oak Ridge National Laboratories with the huge facilities for diffusion process and calutrons. This process was very labor intensive and very energy intensive. And then we come to the first nuclear explosion, which occurred on 16 July 45 in Los Alamos in New Mexico. Now, other countries followed, and surprisingly, Canada was one of the first, and they had the first reactor to achieve criticality outside US was in September 45 in Canada, in the Chalk River, Ontario. Then, of course, Soviet Union, they followed, and the first reactor, F1, near Moscow, went critical in 1946. Then several production graphite moderated reactors were built at Mayak, at Uralsk. And the first Soviet Union atomic bomb exploded in August 29, 1949 at Semipalatinsk test site in Kazakhstan. France started with the Zoe nuclear reactor in 48 in the suburb of Paris, and the first nuclear test followed in 1960 in deserts of Algeria. After several tests in Algeria, they went to further testing at Polynesian atolls where the biggest French thermonuclear tests were done in '68. UK started with Windscale pile number 1, and that came operational in October 1950, and pile number 2 in '51, and on October 3rd, 1952, the UK made the test. This was the 3rd test at Montebello Islands in Western Australia. They made several tests in Australia at different places, like not only Montebello Islands, but also Maralinga and Emofield. China, uranium path, was the first to produce a nuclear explosive device in 16 November 1964, and plutonium path, they achieved first criticality in October 1966. Now, if we look only at the legacy of this initial nuclear endeavors for military purpose, reflecting in nuclear tests, more than 2,000 tests were done worldwide, more than 1,000 by US, more than 700 by Soviet Union. Now, after the 53 Atoms for Peace program announced by US President Eisenhower at the United Nations General Assembly, many research reactors were built all over the world. And according to IEA database, altogether 841 research reactors were built in 70 countries. And out of that, 224 are still in operation in 43 countries. First propulsion reactors for submarines were built in US in '54, then in Soviet Union in '57, then UK, France, and China. Also, we had in the past nuclear propulsion on the ships, like US Savannah ship, like from '59, icebreaker Lenin from Soviet Union in '59, Germany's Otto Hahn in '68, and Japan Mutsu in '74. Now, electricity came later, but still rather early, and so the first test was in '51 by US, but then the first nuclear power plant, proper power plant, was connected to the grid in Russia or Soviet Union at that time in '54 in Obninsk, followed then by UK in '56, US '57, Sweden, Canada, Germany in '62, France '64, Italy '64, India '69, and then China domestic plant Qinshan in '91. So according to, again, IEA database, we have 440 operational and long-term shutdown reactors and 199 permanently shut down reactors for electricity production. Now, if we go into international agreement and standards, so after the first nuclear weapons and nuclear reactors were built, the international agreements and standards related to safety, security, and non-proliferation slowly developed. In '46, US proposed the Baruch plant to eliminate all existing nuclear weapons. It was unsuccessful at that time, and apparently it's still unsuccessful today. After Atoms for Peace program, the International Atomic Energy Agency was created in '57 with the mission to promoting and overseeing the peaceful uses of nuclear technology. In '63 came the Partial Test Ban Treaty, prohibiting tests in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. In '68, the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons was negotiated, and later associated safeguards agreement and additional protocols of IEA came into function. Related to non-proliferation are also treaties of nuclear weapons-free zones, and these we have in Latin America, we have in South Pacific, Southeast Asia, Africa, Central Asia. Now, strategic limitation talks between two major nuclear superpowers resulted in anti-ballistic missile treaty of 72, SALT II of 79, and intermediate range nuclear forces treaty, INF treaty in 87. Unfortunately, two of these are abandoned. Two of these treaties are abandoned. Then Convention on Physical Protection of Nuclear Material, CPPNM, was agreed in 80 and its amendment in 2005. And UN General Assembly adopted in 96 the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and in 2017 the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. After Chernobyl accident in 86, 4 safety conventions were negotiated on earlier notification, on assistance, on safety, and on safety of radioactive waste and spent fuel management. But here is the catch. None of the treaties mentioned so far address the nuclear facilities during wars. The Geneva Convention of 1949 and their additional protocols are international treaties that contain the most important rules limiting the barbarity of war. And so we have first Geneva Convention protects wounded and sick soldiers on land. The second Geneva Convention protects wounded and sick and so on sea. Third Geneva Convention applies to prisoners of war. Fourth Geneva Convention affords protection to civilians, including in occupied territories. And we have 194 states are party to Geneva Conventions. In 1977, additional Protocol 1 to Geneva Conventions prohibiting targeting nuclear electrical generating stations was adopted as the only international legal instrument related to acts of war in and nuclear power plants. And this, if you look which article catches this, this is Article 56, protection of works and installation containing dangerous forces. And how is this defined? Works or installations containing dangerous forces, namely dams, dikes, and nuclear electric generation stations, shall not be made the object of attack. Now, if we go to the international standards, in 58, IAEA published the first safety standard, Safety Series number 1, safe handling of radioisotopes. Now we have a family of well-developed safety standards with more than 200 documents. Also in the area of nuclear security, a lot of progress was made after the first security publication in 72, recommendations for the physical protection of nuclear material, commonly known at that time as Grey Book. By now, the IAEA has published more than 50 guidance documents related to nuclear security. EU also has agreed on further regulating, in addition to EU safeguards, nuclear and radiation safety, with a set of directives and regulations, and in particular, Council Directive on Nuclear Safety from 2009, Directive from 2011 on spent fuel and radioactive waste safe management, and Council Directive of 2013, laying down basic safety standards for protection against ionizing radiation. So now, if we go, are the attacks on nuclear facilities unknown? No, there are many known attacks in the past, but hopefully none with the big environmental impact. So there was attack in 73 on Atucha nuclear power plant in Argentina. In 80, there was attack of Iranian Air Force to the nuclear complex at Al Tuwaita near Baghdad. In 81, Israeli Air Force destroyed Iraq's Osirak nuclear research reactor. Between 84 and 87, Iraq bombed Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant under construction 6 times. In 91, during the Persian Gulf War, the US bombed 3 nuclear reactors and enrichment plant facility in Iraq. And also during the same 91 Persian Gulf, Iraq launched Scud missiles at Israel's Dimona nuclear complex. And as I will be telling later, in 91, during the military hostilities after Slovenia and Croatia declared independence from Yugoslavia, there were threats to the nuclear power plant there. In September 2007, Israel bombed an alleged Syrian reactor under construction in Deir ez-Zor governorate. During this year, during 2022, Russian invasion of Ukraine, fighting took place at the Zaporizhzhia MPP, a site with 6 reactors. The plant training center suffered damage with some fire, and the aggressor occupied the plant. Also, Chernobyl site was occupied. Now, if we go into other facilities under attack, 78, several times very successful attacks by ETA activists, resulting in withdrawing or abandoning the 2 units project, which is here on the picture. In South Africa, also very successful insider job of the ANC activists, delayed the construction of Kuber plant for 1.5 years and with a huge economical damage. And there was also in 2007 break-in at Pelindaba research reactor site by gunmen. What is interesting is also terrorist attack on industry. I'm showing this. This is not, of course, nuclear facility, but just to see the extent. There was in Amenas, Algeria, attacked on joint venture gas facility Sonatrach, British Petroleum and Statoil, carried out by 32 heavy armed terrorists. They took 800 people hostage and 40 staff died in a rescue operation and 29 terrorists. So it was quite something. Now, are the nuclear facilities, nuclear power plants designed against armed threat? Yes, to a certain extent they are. And though this is usually not in public domain, some design-based threat is in public domain. And here you can read what is in the public domain of US NRC. The plant should be designed against determined violent external assault, attack by stealth or deceptive actions, including diversionary actions, and so on and so on, with the force that has following attributes: assistance and equipment, well-trained, including military training and skills, and dedicated individuals willing to kill or be killed, with sufficient knowledge to identify specific equipment or locations necessary for a successful attack, active inside assistance, effective long-range accuracy of weapons, including automatic weapons, hand-carried equipment, including incapacitating agents, explosives, and so on, land and water vehicles. Then, of course, as I mentioned, internal threat, land vehicle bomb assault, water vehicle bomb assault, cyber attack, and nowadays, for sure, there is also some protection against drones. Now, this year, there was a very strong message from the Board of Governors of 2nd March. And the Director General outlined 7 indispensable pillars of nuclear safety and security. Triggered by the situation in Ukraine. And these 7 pillars are: the physical integrity of the facility, whether it is the reactors, fuel bonds, or radioactive waste storage, must be maintained. All safety and security system and equipment must be fully functional at all times. The operating staff must be able to fulfill their safety and security duties and have the capacity to make decisions free of undue pressure. There must be secure off-site power supply from the grid for all nuclear sites. There must be uninterrupted logistical supply chains and transportation to and from the sites. There must be effective on-site and off-site radiation monitoring system and emergency preparedness and response measure. And there must be a reliable communications with the regulator at all times. Now, let me give you a brief real example from Slovenia in '91. This was when Slovenia declared independence from Yugoslavia on 27 June '91. Next day, the Yugoslav army tanks were on the outer borders of Slovenia and hostilities started. Threats were given to attack MPP Krško in some media and by some Yugoslav army generals. So we ordered to reduce the power of the plant to 75%. Then after ceasefire was brokered, on 1st July, 3 Yugoslav fighter jets flew at very low altitude over the MPP, and we ordered the plant to shut down and go to shutdown mode. And then we discussed what is the safest mode. Slovenian regulatory body, MPP, and the TSO, Technical Support Organization, Jožef Stefan. What could be done? To make fast unloading of the core to spent fuel pool, to open the reactor vessel head, like for refueling, and fill the water above the cavity, to put sandbags around all outside pumps, diesel generators, transformers, hydrogen tanks, and so on, to take the hydrogen away from the main generator building, excuse me, to take the oil out of the transformers, to flood the containment to the mid-level of pressure vessel. All options had serious problems. We consulted at that time at least 3 Western regulators, but got no decisive answer. One foreign regulatory body answers, "Don't you have an emergency plan in the case of an armed attack?" Our answer was, yes, we have, but not for the case our own army is attacking us. So at the end, we opt for the following: moving away hydrogen tanks used for generator rotor cooling, bringing to the site 250 kilowatt diesel generator, making improvised cables to connect new DG, diesel generator, make improvised connections to drain steam generator vapor space, and to feed steam generators with fire truck pump, maybe some more, and to train operators to use these new arrangements. In parallel, we made a large awareness campaign to the DG of IEA and many heads of regulatory bodies in Europe, USA, and worldwide to bring our threat to attack MPP Krško to their ministries of foreign affairs, to urge the government of Yugoslavia to respect the Geneva Conventions and not attack or threaten to attack our nuclear power plant. At that time, SNSA asked TSO Jožef Stefan Institute to urgently assess vulnerabilities of MPP against missiles attack from different angles, to assess the time to dry the steam generators and primary water, source term and releases in case of damaged spent fuel pool, and those rates in case of no water left in the spent fuel pool. The results was a confidential report. The public version was printed 2 years later in Nuclear Technology. This is the title of the Nuclear Technology article, and this was the schematic view of how the attack, if attack would come from north or from east or from south, which systems could be endangered, and what is the probability. So to conclude, an overview of design basis threats for nuclear facilities show that a well-designed security system for a nuclear facility can cope with serious security threats. However, it also clearly indicates nuclear facilities are not designed to cope with acts of war. Respecting the Geneva Conventions in the case of hostile military activity in vicinity of a nuclear power plant is essential. Respecting the 7 indispensable pillars of nuclear safety and security introduced at March 22 IAEA Board of Governors is essential. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.